Why church history? Real quick, why church history? And for us, I think the most important way of looking at church history is it's what the Spirit of God has been up to before we showed up. And so if you say, I don't care about church history, you're really saying, I don't care what the living Savior of the world has been up to before I got here. Just tell me about the me part. Don't tell me about the him part. And if you want to know what the Spirit has been up to in the life of the people of God who love Jesus, that is church history. And church history starts with, we teach this, we taught this at a church in the area, and a lady said, aren't you going to teach the Bible? And we were like, well, you know, this is kind of like everything that happened after the Bible. Well, I want to learn the Bible. And she didn't come back, you know. And we were like, this is important. This is really important stuff because this is your heritage. These are the roots of the people who've gone before you. The Bible is important, but this is important too. And so the way that we and most people mark church history will begin right here is with the death of the apostles. Take it away, brother.
I think that was supposed to be a 30-second introduction.
Your
story about the lady was 30 seconds alone.
I know. We'll get there.
That was like 8 minutes. Now we had 2 minutes for each slide. Now we got like one.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're like an old married couple, so sorry, you're going to have to endure that.
Hey guys, I'm Michael. I'm the president of Credo House. It's really nice to be here. Real excited about teaching this and opening up for questions and answers. I know a lot of you guys from coming in the Credo House, but some of you guys I have yet to meet. But welcome here as we're going to try to give you guys all, I'm talking every single bit of church history in 45 minutes, okay? So you guys are going to be church history scholars by the time you get here. So we've done this by events, just single events and single pictures for each one. I think we've got 18 events that we've got to go through. And these are what we would call turning points in church history that have significant implications towards the development of church history. And the first one of these is the death of the apostles. Now, obviously, you would say the apostles died, but how they died is very important. The Bible doesn't speak about how any of the apostles died. It talks about the martyrdom of Stephen, but any of the major 12 apostles, we don't have anything. The last words we have about Peter in Acts are, he went his own way. That's it. And Paul, he stayed 2 more years there preaching. That's it. So what we have to do is we have to look into church history and try to figure out what happened to all these apostles. And the interesting thing is whenever you look into the guys that came after the apostles and wrote their books and wrote their sermons and wrote their letters to each other, that's where we get our information about the apostles and the traditions that come about. What we find out is we can be generally sure that all the apostles died a martyr's death outside of John. There's some debate about John. But what we've done is we've taken, isn't that?
Yeah, we both at the same time.
We've taken the different traditions and put them up here, and you can see, you know, Andrew hung from an olive tree, Philip crucified, Simon crucified, James thrown from the top of the temple as he was told to deny his faith. Why does this make it? Because, listen here, because it establishes the testimony that they gave. Had they not died, had they went off and lived a rich life or a happy life or whatever else, it could have been a little bit more suspect about their testimony. But their testimony of dying leaves us with a question. If this is not true, if Christ has not risen from the grave, how do you explain this? Important part of church history.
Exactly. Well, and a lot of people will say, well, don't Muslim people fly into buildings and don't Muslim people die for their faith every day? What's so important about these people? Remember, in Islam, you are trusting the private dream of one person. If that private dream didn't happen, it's all a sham. Okay? With Christianity, it's all public. And these people knew if it was a sham or not. Every Muslim person, they're not quite sure. They're trusting. Now, they're convinced of their trust, but these people knew if he rose or not, and they went all the way. But realize, in the early church, you have to realize the hardship that our brothers and sisters went through. Okay, we see that in the Bible itself. We can tell that this is happening, but the Edict of Milan is a huge moment in church history. All these are very important, but only 20 years before this, we have guys, Diocletian, Galerius, who actually officially, they were the most powerful people on the planet, and they said, on this date, every Christian will be killed. Every Christian on this date will be murdered. Okay, so everybody get ready. What do you do when you're putting your kids to bed at night, knowing that there's a day coming where you're all going to be done? You know, you're not investing in anything, you're not buying any property, you're not really doing much of anything, you're not working out. You know, what's the use? We're all going to be killed. Okay, well, thankfully, there was a period where they were all supposed to be killed, but they weren't. But what happened was that there were a whole bunch of different separations of emperors. Everybody was vying for who is going to be the head emperor. Okay, who is going to be the head person that's going to be pushing the Roman Empire forward. And the Roman Empire is very healthy at this time in history still. Okay, and there are a few guys who are vying for the power, but one of the guys is Constantine, and he has no stinking chance. Constantine has no chance that he's going to win. And he is facing a force. Imagine Constantine going to bed at night knowing tomorrow I'm going to face a force that's over twice my size. Okay? But right before he gets up, well, I don't know exactly when in the night he has this dream, but he has this dream that says, you need to fight under this emblem. Okay? And the emblem is the Chi Rho, which is actually right here too. The Chi Rho, you're supposed to fight under this emblem, okay? And he might not even know what this emblem means. We don't know exactly what's going in his head, okay? But we just know, fight under this emblem. So he put it on every shield. He put it everywhere, saying, I had this dream to fight under this emblem. And he just kicked the butts of the guy that he was going up against, okay? Even the point that their forces pushed the other force back so strong that the leader of the other force actually drowned in the river because everybody was retreating so much that they physically forced him into the river and he drowned, okay? And so Constantine had no idea what was going on until he realized that Chi Rho is the first two letters of Christ in Greek. And he realized that the Christian God had given him success. The Christian God had allowed him to win. So imagine just the most pagan head of the United States finally realizing that Yahweh just interceded in my behalf. And the Edict of Milan, overnight, within 20 years, all Christians were supposed to be killed. Now, Christianity is fully legal. Give all of their property back to them. And this is the first time in history that it's actually safe to be a Christian. And it all starts with the Edict of Milan.
Shortly after this, you have the Council of Nicaea that's convened. Why is the Council of Nicaea convened? Because we're free. We can come out of our caves. We can come out of hiding. We can talk theology. So the Council of Nicaea is often called the first ecumenical council. Ecumenical meaning everyone. We only had 7 of them. Up until 787 was the last one, although Roman Catholics have 21 of them, but they're not truly ecumenical since it's just the Roman Catholic Church, although it's ecumenical to them, but different story. What you've got the first ecumenical council where they come together and what do they discuss? What's the most important item on the agenda? Is it the canon of Scripture? Is it the inspiration and inerrancy? No, it's who is Jesus, because that is the most controversial question that has ever been asked. Who do men say that I am? It's the first thing dealt with at the council is who in the world is this Jesus, because we've got to make sure we define orthodoxy. What has everybody believed from the very beginning about Jesus, and what does the Bible teach about Jesus was essentially the question at the council. You had 322 bishops come together, and you had one guy who said, I believe Jesus was a created being. And him and his buddy were the only ones out of the 322 who believed that. The guy said, nope, that's novel. Nobody's ever believed that. You can't make something up new. And number 2, the Bible doesn't teach it. So that's where you have the establishment of Christ in creed and in articulation. Not in reality, but in creed and in articulation as being homoousia with the Father. Same stuff as the Father. Not lower stuff, not almost as big as the Father, but the exact same essence as the Father.
Yeah. And the Council of Nicaea, I mean, that's...
Dude, I'm done. You move on to the next one.
I'm transitioning.
We made deals.
I know.
Remember the deals?
Okay. I accept your deal. All I was going to say is make sure you love this thing. Make sure you love the Council of Nicaea.
You gotta love the Council of Chalcedon too. So
I know.
That's yours.
Which that was my transition.
Go!
No, we need to work this out right now.
Dude.
Okay. All right, so after Nicaea, Chalcedon is is huge as well. I mean, I think for all of us in our church, if you are not struggling with looking at Jesus and saying, who in the world are you? Or what in the world are you? You have to realize that there has and always will be only one God-man. Okay? If someone's saying, yeah, I'm having a hard time really figuring out the God-man, it's like, well, guess what? You have no framework for this. You should be struggling figuring out how there can be a being with one conscious center of thought, but has fullness of God and fullness of man. Okay? And it's almost like he's so much man that he's not God at all. And he's so much God that he's not man at all. But he's one, you don't go up to him and say, hey, I'd really like to talk to the God, Jesus, right now. This is the Council of Chalcedon. Jesus saying, who do people say that I am? And when Jesus says, who am I? Who do you say that I am? With Chalcedon, there were people who were saying, no, I got it. Okay, I'm going to be able to, I can communicate this. I'm a gifted communicator, and I will be able to communicate to my people in a way that they can understand. So you had a guy named Eutychus who would say, well, here's what it is. It's like God and man are put in a blender, and they're blended up and put together so much that you really can't see the God anymore. You really can't see the man anymore. It's this third substance. Okay? Or you had another guy saying, no, it's like God and man are duct taped together inside the person of Jesus. No, that's not right. No, it's like you have God that's wearing a man suit. Yeah, that's it. Think of God wearing a man suit. Okay, so you have these three, and some other ones, but these three main ways that pastors after Nicaea are trying to communicate to their people Jesus. But all of them, basically, some people are like, well, no, that doesn't sound right, because if God is wearing a man suit, I need more than my skin to be saved, right? I don't just need someone to save my skin, I need someone to actually save me and to save every bit of me. So I need someone who represents me fully, not just looks like me. So the Council of Chalcedon was huge in being the first time that they rejected those three things and said, no, he is completely God and completely man. He's completely God in the sense that he is God enough to fix what needs to be fixed. Completely man that he can pay what needs to be paid. And the Council of Chalcedon is this huge sign in the road that says, when you think about Jesus as you're reading the Bible, let us direct you and let us keep you in a way that you do not lose the spectacular aspect of the God-man.
Now, this is one you may not have seen before, but this is a significant turning point in church history, especially with regards to the rise of ecclesiology and understanding the rise of the institutionalized church. Now, you got to understand, here's one of the things that I try to tell people whenever you're dealing with church history. It's not us and them. This is our heritage. It's our DNA. It's who we were when we were 3 years old. Yeah, did we make some mistakes? Sure. Did we do stupid things? Of course. Keep that in mind. That's us. It's not, oh, that's back in the Roman Catholic Church. Don't go there, ever. Don't let your congregation go there. Don't let your people go there, because this is one unity. Here's a point where you have Pope Leo the First meeting with Attila the Hun. Attila the Hun was coming from Germany. We're not really sure where the Huns came from, maybe in the east, but either way, they were a formidable foe, scary foe. Rome was on the brink of disaster as it was. 410, possibly it fell, maybe it's fallen a few years after this, but they don't know what to do with Attila the Hun. The Huns, they dressed up in mice skin. Yeah, I think a lot of mice. That would just scare me to death right there, all right? That's all you'd have to do, and I surrender. But they come here, and Rome hears they're coming into Rome. And they don't have the army to take on the Huns. So they're just like, don't even try. We got to come up with a different option. So they call their pastor. They said, hey, Leo, what do you think about going out and meeting Attila the Hun? All right, you want me to go with your army? No, we're going to send 4 guys with you. Okay, so me and 4 guys, Attila the Hun. That's right. Can you do it? Pope said, yeah, I'll go try. So they go and have lunch at a river. And at this lunch, we don't know what was said. There's all kinds of legends. Here's the only thing we know, and the only thing you need to know, is Attila the Hun left. He turned back. Later legends, as in this picture, have Peter and Paul flanking Attila the Hun with swords drawn. above him, flying above him. We're pretty sure that didn't happen, but what we do know is this: that the Pope comes back to the greatest city in the world, over the hill. Everybody's scared to death. Are the Huns coming? Are they going to kill us? And here's their pastor saying, I took care of it. I got it. I sent them home. So all of a sudden the people, is the pastor in charge of the military and politics as well? God is with him in every area. So keep that in mind, because that's a growth of the church.
Yeah, and that takes us to this place, which what you have to realize in church history is, we can't look at the hearts of all leaders, of all church leaders, but what we can't assume is that all these people were corrupt. If you have Pope in front of your name, you're corrupt, and you hate God and you hate Jesus, and you're in it for yourself. Leo, that's not his heart. You could actually have a guy named Pope Leo as your hero, and that's okay, because there is no such thing as a Roman Catholic Church. Even right now, people don't say, what church do you go to? What denomination are you part of? They wouldn't know what you're talking about right now. It's just us. It's just those who follow Jesus. But what we're coming into is at around 450, they start elevating, saying, oh my gosh, our pastor has just been greater than our entire military. Our pastor has just pulled off what our military could not pull off. That's a big deal, right? What do you do as a pastor? You're like, I don't know if I have this power, but this is what the crowning of Charlemagne signifies, though, is we get to a place that by 800 AD, you cannot be the Roman emperor unless Billy Graham says it's okay. Okay? Or whoever you want to put in that slot. So that Charlemagne isn't actually the head until the Pope gives his blessing. Because what the people are realizing is that if the pastor is truly the representative of God and is truly serving God, then God is more powerful than any human. So let's let the pastor, basically, who's interacting with God, let's make sure that he gives the blessing of whoever has just been selected to be the next emperor. And here's the deal: there wasn't like some lobbyist group that was trying to make this a reality. It just became a reality after Leo, and after these things started growing, people just realized, oh my gosh, if the Pope can do this, let's let him, because we need him to be in these places. But this starts becoming, though, almost, we would say, the golden years, okay? Because now we ended up having some problems.
It grows and grows. The institutionalized church is one of the themes that we want you to see, because you got to understand why things begin to fall apart later on. Later on, the Reformation, here at 1054, where you have a crazy situation. Pope is a big guy, and he thinks that God has put him in a position. No fault to him. It seems that God had put them in that position. Don't be too hard on him at this point. They're trying to keep control. They're trying to keep the gospel safe. They're not trying to corrupt the gospel. There's no secret goal of saying, hey, I'm going to get rich and corrupt the gospel. No, they think they're doing what's right. This is us maybe in our teenage years, right? Don't have it all figured out, but we think we do, right? So the Pope says to the Eastern Emperor, or the Eastern Patriarch, you better submit to me. You've got to start submitting. You better start doing what I'm saying. For years, he's saying, no, you have no right to tell me what to do. You're no greater than I am. Finally, the Pope sends a representative, Cardinal Humbert, to Hagia Sophia to talk to a guy named Michael Cerularis. Michael Cerularis was the Patriarch of Constantinople at this time. Michael Cerularis was preaching a sermon on Sunday morning, and Cardinal Humbert came in and said, will you submit? He said, no. He said, here's your excommunication orders. So, what does Michael Cerularis do? He draws up excommunication orders of his own. He says, here's yours. So they excommunicated each other, the East and the West, and this is called the Great Schism, which is at least a handle for the split between the East and the West, which had been going on and continues to go on later on. But a very significant time in church history, the break between Eastern Orthodoxy and, we just call it this time, the Western Church.
Now we get into an area, sorry that I'm covering this one. We get in an area where the Crusades, around this time, so 1054 is where we're dating that split. Starting about 1099, we start having these Crusades. Now, at a high level, we're teaching through the Crusades at Credo House right now, where we go through one every week. But at a very high level, what the Crusades are is Jerusalem is run by Muslims. Muslims are overtaking all of that part of the world, getting ready to move up into Constantinople. Basically, the Eastern world that used to be Christian is now Muslim. And they are getting to where they have taken over Jerusalem. Now, at this time as well, you have Christians from the West that they really like to go to Jerusalem. It's like a pilgrimage. And when they go on this pilgrimage, as people do today that go to Jerusalem, they say, man, I just invigorated my faith. And it was just a powerful thing for me to go to Jerusalem. You should go to Jerusalem too. And even there was a guy named Thorvald the Far Traveler. Okay, to give you an idea, so this is a Viking guy who becomes a pastor. Okay, a Viking that becomes a pastor, and he starts preaching, and two poets and someone in his church start making fun of him. He kills all three of them because he's a Viking, and he can do that. Okay, now, but part of what he does, though, is he goes to Jerusalem on a pilgrimage of penance. Okay, so what happens in the Crusades, though, remember these are Middle Ages here, is that people, though, who are trying to go to Jerusalem start getting killed along the way. And when they get to Jerusalem, they're robbed and they're killed. Muslims start harassing them. And there are some other things involved too, but the Christians start hearing about these things and saying, man, I had 4 people I knew that just all got killed. We need to go and do something about that. We need to fight back a little bit. We need to take Jerusalem back so that we can go on pilgrimage. Now, there's a lot of details of the Crusades, but by the time we get to the 4th Crusade, though, the East and the West were kind of teaming up together to try and take Jerusalem back so that people could go on pilgrimages. And the East and the West, basically the East had let the West down time and time again. So it's like the West, they traveled 2,000 miles. The East just had to basically go down their neighborhood, but the East never came through. Crusade after crusade, the East didn't come through. So then there was a time, the 4th Crusade takes us to a final breaking point between the East and the West, because what happens is that finally the East says, hey, look, we're getting run over. You need to please come and don't just go to Jerusalem, but please come and liberate us from the Muslims. And what the West does is they go there and they actually fight against the East. So where the Crusades were Christians against Muslims, the 4th Crusade, the Christians from the West are trying to basically pay back vengeance on the Christians from the East and even kill some and rape some women, stuff like that. Bad time. 4th Crusade is not anything that we'd say, that's my model for church planting. There's nothing about the 4th Crusade that we'd want to emulate, but what you need to appreciate from the 4th Crusade is that this is the dagger in the heart of any relations between the East and the West for many, many centuries to come.
From there, you have the invention of the printing press, and invention of the printing press, you have finally kind of the democratization of knowledge and understanding. Beforehand, everybody had to go through the church, go through the educated people. Now, not that they were too educated at that time, but there were a lot of people in the church that you would go to, and you'd go to your priest and try to figure out answers to questions if you had any. That was the only place really to go. Books were way too expensive. I mean, a book of the Bible would cost you a 2-year salary just to have it put on sheepskins or vellum. So you don't go there. But at this time, you have this new invention that's crazy. I mean, it's like the internet being invented. It's that revolutionary, or more so, because all of a sudden, all the uneducated people had access to knowledge, had access to reading, they had reason to learn. And this is what is going to spark not only the Reformation, but the Great Enlightenment that comes afterwards.
Okay, so realize the Crusades were around the 1000s, 1100s, into the 1200s. Now we're up to 1453. Okay, now Constantinople, it's still today in Turkey. Constantinople, a huge thing, thinking about Constantinople, is that this is the East. Constantine started, it's named after Constantine. It started as one of the most beautiful, powerful, modern cities that started as a Christian. A Christian founds the city, beautiful city, the church of the Hagia Sophia. Even today you can go to this church, and it is one of the largest churches in the world. Even today, still one of the largest churches in the world. But finally, Islam overtakes Constantinople. Okay, and it's still Muslim today. That church is now a Muslim church even today.
So museum.
Yeah. But it's all. It looks like a mosque. It looks like a mosque. And if you go there, or with 1453, is to realize the West is on their own. Okay, so we still have Christians in the East, but as far as we are talking about church leadership, the church leadership is really now housed in the West, because the West hasn't been overrun by Muslims, okay? So 1453 is a big symbolic defeat of how we had the Church of the East and the Church of the West.
With the fall of the East, you have all these documents and all these people running to the West. Now, a lot of them stayed in the East because they'd rather stay with their Muslims than they would the West, because there was so much hatred. There still is. It's bizarre how much tension there is between the East and the West. But that's a different story. But you have all these documents, and a lot of them having to be New Testament Greek documents. Now in the West, all you used was the Latin Vulgate that was 1,000 years old. So you had a 1,000-year-old Bible, and that's the one you used, and that's the one that was approved by the church, and nobody else did anything else. If you even dared to translate the Bible at this time, you'd translate from the Latin Vulgate, which is weird because you're translating from a translation, right? Even Wycliffe's Bible was translated from the Latin Vulgate into English, the first semi-English Bible. This is a significant turning point, because what you have is Erasmus, who is a very much a patriot, very much a humanist, but he loves knowledge and he loves understanding, and he puts together a Greek New Testament. Now this, you're going, so? This is revolutionary at the time. You got a Greek New Testament. For the first time, you can do true exegetical studies. You're not exegeting the Latin Vulgate, you're exegeting en masse production the Greek New Testament.
Which just takes us to an event that many of you are going to be familiar with. On October 31st, 1517, the reason...
1 year after this.
Just 1 year after this, what was happening in Wittenberg and other places in Germany and throughout the world was that they were building St. Peter's Basilica. Today's money, $2 billion to build this church, okay? $2 billion to build this church, so they have to fund it in some creative ways, right? Well, one of the ways that they fund it is through indulgences, the sale of indulgences, which basically is, if you give me $1,000, I'll get your grandma out of purgatory and into heaven faster. Now, on October 31st, if you looked at all of the relics in Wittenberg, okay, they supposedly had 5 hairs from Mary. They had a tooth from Jerome. Okay, if you go and look at all of the relics that are in Wittenberg and you give an indulgence, you can actually get 1.2 million years of time sped up for people in purgatory if you do that on October 31st. Okay, well, Martin Luther, basically, you don't ever want to tick off a German, okay, let alone a big German that's very outspoken and is sharp-witted and sharp-tongued. And what Luther really comes to the realization is if the Pope can do these things, okay, I'm not going to give it all away, but if the Pope actually can do that, if the Pope can give 1.2 million years of someone sped up in purgatory, why does he need money? If he has the power to actually do that out of love, wouldn't he have the people in his church and the people that he knew, wouldn't he out of love, if he had that power, actually just do it? Why would you need something as time-bound as building a physical church? Why? Out of love, shouldn't you just do it anyway? And so part of the 95 Theses, if you read through them, many of them are against indulgences, but Luther starts leading the way. Many people are following, many people are this way, really saying, do we actually need to go that way, or could we maybe just go through Jesus?
Of course, you know, this started the Reformation. Protestant Reformation, as it's called, a name that was given to it by the Catholics, a protesting, a feeling of a restoration of the true church. And so here we are moving forward, and you wonder what's going to happen to this church that is moving forward, that has restored the gospel. Well, you got the Marsburg dispute, which I think is a great one. It's called the Marsburg colloquially, where Martin Luther is gaining a great following, and he's moving forward with the Reformation in Germany. And in Switzerland, you got Jürg Zwingli, who is moving forward with the Reformation. They both got similar ideas. And you got in Germany a guy named Butzer, who is saying, hey, we got to get these two guys together. They are awesome. Let's pull it together and let's move forward with this Reformation and join everybody. Well, they get together at Marsburg after a long story with Butzer. And as they meet, they're discussing 15 points of theology. They agree on 14 points. Which one do they disagree upon? The nature of the Lord's Supper. What does it mean whenever Christ said, this is my body? Now, Luther took it more literally, wanted it to be kind of a more real presence type view, and Zwingli said, no, it's a memorial view. And they could not agree upon this, and that in this Marsburg disputation, they went their separate ways. Martin Luther, it is said, got so mad at Zwingli while they were discussing, he jumped up, pulled out his knife, and carved in the table, hoc est corpus meum. This is my body. But here's the deal. They didn't unite. Now we have two reformations. How many more are there going to be later on? And it's the cost. Counting the cost. Stay under one pope and one institution. At least you're at least in theory one. But right now you've got these guys heading separate ways, which is symbolic of what goes on later on with the Protestants. Take this one too. You've got not only Martin Luther opening the door for new understanding, rebelling against the church, saying that the church was wrong about certain things. Now everybody else is learning too. And it's not, the Reformation is not only happening within the church, it's happening in culture, it's happening in all learning environments, philosophy and science and anatomy. Well, you got a guy that, whenever we're talking about thought of the Enlightenment, people are really excited about our ability to know things with certainty. Mathematics, 1 + 1 = 2. Now we've got science where we can look through a microscope or a telescope and be able to see things that we've never seen before and know for sure. So all kinds of things we're wanting to know with certainty. Well, old Rene Descartes liked this idea. He liked what's called indubitability. Anybody ever heard of that? Indubitability? It's a great word which simply means you can't be wrong. In all my knowledge, I want to get to the point where I can't be wrong. So he is commissioned by the church to figure out how to argue for God and not ever be wrong.
He was obviously never married.
Yeah, that's right. His wife was indubitable. But as the story goes, we're not sure if the Dutch oven experience is actually accurate, but I think it is from what I've seen. And I just like the story, so that's why I think it is. He gets into a Dutch oven, and he basically says, I'm not coming out until I figure this out, and I can indubitably prove the existence of God. To make a long story short, after a long time, he says, I'm doubting everything, but I'm doubting. So at least I know indubitably that I exist. Because to doubt, you have to be a doubter. So you have to exist to be that doubter. So indubitably, I know that I exist. Indubitably, I know that I did not create myself. Therefore, indubitably, I know that God exists. Why this? Because it creates this idea within the church of indubitability, that we have to be absolutely certain about everything before it can actually be believed. And this carries on even until today.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're going to see right now is all of these things now are really applying to you today. You might not think they are, but as you chew on these things, you'll see, oh my gosh, I know 5 people that are right there right now. Because all of these time periods are now starting to affect different people at different rates and different times. If you've never heard of Friedrich Schleiermacher, first you just need to know how to say his name, because you're going to be hanging out with people where you can drop Schleiermacher, and they'll be like, what? And then tell them. But a lot of people, this is where they're at, okay? We got to the point where we were doubting everything, questioning everything, coming up with good solutions for things that were being questioned, and of course the eyes turned to the church. And the idea is saying, do you really, intellectually, can you really believe that there was a man who walked on water? Can you intellectually really embrace a virgin, Mary? Can you really embrace that snakes actually talked, that snake talked in the garden? Can you really believe these things? So Schleiermacher came to rescue and save Christianity. Schleiermacher had it figured out, basically. He said, wait a second, I got it. I'm smart, I am intellectual, you can be an intellectual Christian. Here's how you become an intellectual Christian. And the illustration I like to give is with Santa Claus, okay? We all, even though I still put the food and I still drink the milk, that my kids leave out and tell them that Santa Claus came down, and they look up intellectually up in the fireplace and say, how can he fit down there? The hole's too small and all these things. I'm like, well, hey, don't intellectually dive into it too much. But the thing that we all do, though, is that we intellectually know that Santa Claus isn't real, right? So should we just, if we are someone who's not a Christian, do we just still embrace Christmas, basically? So if Schleiermacher said, I know that Santa Claus isn't real, we'd say, okay, should you cancel Christmas at your house? He'd say, heck no. No. He said, I love the feeling of Christmas. Guys, it's the warmest time of the year. All the food, all of just the environment, all the family. I love the feeling of Christmas. I know Santa Claus isn't real, but Christmas, come on, that feels good. Okay? Schleiermacher did that with all the truths of God. What he says is you reject the dogmas. So people say you reject the dogmas and propositions of religion. Someone said, okay, I reject all of the Mary, Jesus, Trinity. I reject all that stuff. He says, you know what? Religion doesn't need it. I don't need those things. It is only human reflection on the content of our religious feelings or affections. Do you say that you cannot accept miracles, revelation, inspiration? You're right. We're no longer children. The time for fairy tales is past. You don't have to believe in anything about Christianity. Just feel the feeling of how great it feels to walk into Frontline Church on Sunday. Yeah, I don't believe the Bible's true. I don't believe that Jesus is true, but I feel really good when I'm at church on Sunday. And for Schleiermacher, he saved Christianity, which is called liberal theology. And many United States seminaries fell to liberal theology. Great Princeton, Yale, many of these places fell because they thought Schleiermacher had finally figured out how you can save Christianity intellectually by basically just saying it's just about a feeling. Come here, love the feeling, let's do good in our city, and it doesn't matter what you believe about Jesus or the Bible.
Scopes monkey trial in 1925 put this on public trial, basically. Put Schleiermacher and rationalism against Orthodox Christianity. There are many people called fundamentalists at this time. Probably not the same as the fundamentalist you think of today, but the historic fundamentalism of the 1920s is just basically people saying we are still going to defend the fundamentals of the faith. We still believe in the virgin birth. We still believe in resurrection, inspiration, and all the things we believed in before. Well, there was a great court case that had to do with evolution, and this court case got all kinds of media and public attention in Tennessee. And in 325, what you have is two guys going at it in the public, on the radio, about evolution. And essentially what happens at this trial, it's a very interesting trial. You can read the entire transcripts of it online. It doesn't take that long if you just look up Scopes monkey trial. But essentially what happens at this trial is Christianity is made to look really dumb. You get this guy putting, Clarence Darrow putting William Jennings Bryan on the stage and basically saying, do you really believe snakes can talk? Do you really believe that man can get swallowed by a whale and live? Now the whole deal was this: I will get up on the stand, you can ridicule me, but tomorrow you're going to get up on the stand and I'm going to ridicule you. Do you really believe that there's gills? And that time that's what they believed, in eugenics and all kinds of stuff that he was prepared for. But the next day he didn't get his chance because Clarence Darrow pulled the fast one and said, we submit, we lost. But while they lost, Clarence Darrow and the guy that was defending evolution and ridiculing Christianity, while they lost in the court case, they won in public opinion by pulling it. And it really symbolizes this mass acceptance in America, finally, of liberalism and moving towards Schleiermacher.
Yeah, which takes us, we have Christianity over here that's a liberal Christian following Schleiermacher. Now we have fundamentalists over here that are so bent out of shape about embracing the fundamentals of the truth and embracing the faith that it's almost like Christians have to choose. Okay, am I going to just be about a feeling, or am I going to still believe in Jesus as the God-man, but I'm going to basically be inside of a castle? And we're just going to build a moat around the castle. We're going to build these great walls around the castle because we're going to protect the truth. Gosh darn it, no one's dancing around here. No one's doing anything. We are protecting the truth inside these walls. Well, you have these two polar opposites, and then we have Billy Graham step into the scene, and who's really seen as being one of the first of the evangelicals. someone who says, you know what, I really still hold to the doctrines of the faith. I do believe the Bible's true. I do believe Jesus is the God-man. I do believe that there's a Trinity. I believe these things. I believe that Jesus walked on water, but I'm not going to be in the castle. I'm going to preach anywhere I can possibly preach. I'm going to be in New York City inside of whatever they'll give me, I'm there if I can communicate to people Jesus. The fundamentalists are going to hate me because I'm not in the castle surrounded by the moat. I'm taking risks. I'm in communist China sharing the gospel. Yes, I can be corrupted, but I'm going to be out there anyway. The liberals hate me because I'm standing for truth, but here I am nonetheless. And Billy Graham really gives one of the best pictures of evangelicalism, being here saying, our New York campaign has been challenged by some extremists on 2 points. First, as to sponsorship, I'd like to make myself clear. I intend to go anywhere, sponsored by anybody, to preach the gospel of Christ, if there are no strings attached to my message. I am sponsored by civic clubs, by universities, ministerial associations, and councils of churches all over the world. I intend to continue. 1957, he's saying this. This is very recent in the history of the church. This takes us to really where we are right now. We can go definitely way further into where we are right now. But evangelicalism is really the rescue of Christianity from fundamentalism, and from many of the fundamentalists should still be many heroes of us. They just went to a place where we needed it to be able to be adjusted, but also still taking a stand against liberalism. Liberal theology still wins the day in many academia circles today. It's as if evangelicalism hasn't even existed yet.
Yeah, by the way, that's 1957 there.
Yeah,
Graham didn't go back in time or anything like that.
So that is church history in less than 45 minutes.